Hello there, I'm Chris Januszewski and welcome to the Rebellious Times Podcast. Today we've got Srinivas Kilambi, CEO of Sriya.AI. How are you doing, Srinivas?
Very fine. Thank you, Chris, for having me on the podcast.
You're very welcome. The pleasure's all mine. I'm super excited to have you on today. You've got a lot of experience that I think our viewers are going to get a lot of benefit from, including, working for some of the biggest companies in the world, success experience with multiple startups, and also talking about something that's a very new concept and very relevant to the world right now, which is large numerical models. So thank you. Excited. I'd love to start with your background. Tell me, kind of how you got started and give me the journey to where you're at now.
Well, so basically, I was born in India, studied in the very famous IIT, the Indian Institute of Technology, Madras, which is probably tougher to get in than MIT, and started my first company in India before I even graduated, and that's pretty rare in mid to late 80s. Came to the United States, did my master's and doctorate. I'm also a CFA. So basically, that's my academic. I'm a PhD in engineering and CFA. My PhD was very unique because it produced no publications and 4 patents. And 2 of them became successful IPO companies in 1996 and 97, Commodore Applied Technologies and Commodore Separation Technologies. Together, they both pulled in about over $102 million from Wall Street. And that was exciting to go from what we call a poor, starving grad student to a founder, successful 2 company exits in a matter of 3 years.
Amazing.
So that was my starting journey. Then in 2003, I had the opportunity to share dais with late Mr. Tata, who just passed away last year, and we talked about my interest in renewables, green materials, and how the world carbon footprint has to come down. He liked my thinking. He invited me to come back to India and lead Tata's green innovation, which I accepted. And I was the CEO for Tata Green and Tata Innovation Center from 2003 to 5. And then from 6 to 7, I was also the CEO for Reliance Innovations. Unfortunately, both of them did no innovation. So I had to really come back to the United States with my ideas. And I began 3 companies. 2 of them were funded by Kleiner Perkins, Khosla Ventures, Gates Foundation. Khosla Ventures made a term sheet, but we didn't accept the term sheet. Kleiner, Gates Foundation, Bright Capital. And then they were based on biorefinery and green cement materials. And one of them was acquired for $280 million, and the other one for 62. And then after that, I took a small breather, became a faculty. I self-learned AI from scratch in 2014 onwards, completely learned myself, machine learning and AI, never took a course. And then became a faculty at Clarkson University from 2019 till 21, during the COVID before and after, and then began Sriya.AI after that. That's my journey.
Fantastic. Wow. What an amazing journey. So you got out the gates fast into the startup world and you've had a lot of success.
Right. I've always been a very startup entrepreneurial mindset, and that's still there even today after so many years. Yes.
I wanted to kind of skip back to something you mentioned from your experience of working on green technology. So green technology, climate change, it's a space where it appears perspectives change on something that is potentially so vast and affects everybody in the world. It seems like, at one point there was a hole in the ozone and it seems to close up. And then another time the sea levels are rising, then they're not rising anymore. From your experience, kind of where are we at with green technology, the need for green technology, and how do we as kind of normal people on the streets navigate this world where we're told different things and the narrative seems to keep changing?
Yeah, and that's unfortunate because the narrative changes with the political administration in any country, and for right or wrong. So I'm not trying to say who is right, who's wrong, but it shouldn't change. There is no doubt that there is a climate change. There is greenhouse gases increase. How catastrophic it is going to be, we don't know. But I've never felt in Atlanta in October colder than this year. So I've been living for 30 years, so I can straight away see the difference. The storms are getting stronger, the floods are getting longer, bigger. So yes. Now, what is causing it is enormous amount of greenhouse gas emissions. Let me take one example, which I think is very critical. People forget. So one of the people talk about gas, petrol, cars. Yeah, it's important, but industrial pollution is also huge, and one big example is cement. So cement is second most used material on earth after water. People don't know that, in the form of concrete, and it produces 8% of world's greenhouse gases and consumes about 8% of world's energy, which is substantial. So my technology, I have a patent in US patent, and it basically it removes the kiln, it converts 1600 degrees centigrade cement, and it can start at 200 degrees centigrade, and actually it can go down to zero. So you're cutting down the energy and the greenhouse gas footprint by a third to a half. Think about that, from 8% to down to 5 or 4. So that was a fantastic technology. I don't want to take a name, but one of the largest cement companies loved it, acquired it, did nothing for 10 years. And that's, to me, is sad. Knowing very well that you are polluting the world with your conventional technologies in cement and coal, acquiring a cutting edge, knowing very well is better, but not doing anything for just monetary gain, that too for 10 years, I think, in my opinion, is a serious issue, if not a crime. So we got the technology back after 10 years, and NSF gave us a grant for $3 million to revive it. But the point is not that, it's 10 years lost. So imagine if those 10 years would have been put in, and 5 or 10 of these plants would have been replaced or retrofitted with this technology. It would have made a significant impact, because that's one of the biggest emitters of greenhouse gases. So that's it. Similarly, people talk of electric vehicles. Yes, they're good, but if you're going to have a lot of greenhouse gases in lithium production, or in its um, mining, or all these elements of rare earth, then it defeats the purpose. So you got to take a life cycle analysis as far as uh, business, government is concerned. We as individuals, I think we have a role to play, and I think we can start from the smallest, by not by taking care of our trees, making sure that we contribute to greening around us, maybe car commute, no, things like that, with carpools. A number of things we can do as individuals. But I think if each one of us puts in a 0.0001%, there are enough people on earth to make a big difference. But also the industries need to look from, not from just financial, but they should also have the obligation to do what is right, not just what is financially right. Okay, and that, I think, is missing.
Yeah, thank you. That does appear to be a theme in the world, right? When certain things make sense, but the money suggests to
Also, the
otherwise
political
don't.
will, political will should not go from this end to that end. You can't have an administration change and suddenly you become 100% green to minus 100% green. You can't have that. Okay, so you need to have a balance, and that balance should be across all parties, administrations, so that you can't have a company starting up in Biden administration and then going next administration and shutting down and then again coming back. So nothing will thrive that way. You need to have a political will, a business will, and a personal will. All three have to come together. But I think the first two are more important than the third, really, in that order.
But that's a really interesting perspective. Right, let's flip over to AI. I know, so a lot of the participants I work with have some form of AI in what they're doing, right? And that was by choice, by me, because it's very relevant. We're in a world where we're building businesses, we're trying to find opportunities, we're trying to stay relevant. But when I first spoke to you and you told me what you were doing, I started to think, well, this is potential evolution, right? This isn't another AI conversation about similar things. This is solving a different problem. So please introduce me to the world of LNMs. That's N for November.
So LNM is a parallel universe to LLM. So it's like they don't intersect at all. at least till now. So a large language model, which was brought in first by OpenAI in 2022 November, is a fantastic tool which allows to generate uh, words, images based on its learning and the prompts. So, and it's a very large model, and it basically is supposed to be learning billions and billions of parameters. And virtually, it's supposed to give you a very accurate analysis or synopsis of what's happening. The things are, it doesn't work that way many times, but that's okay. So it does hallucinate. Which, in my opinion, is a glorified term for big errors, but that's separate. LNM is a large numerical model, is a completely different. It is basically looking at business data is predominantly numerical. Business data is predominantly categorical. It's structured. They are in tables of SAP, Oracle, and they would continue to do this way. You put orders, you have production orders, you have transportation, logistics, financials. They're all numbers. And if you put spreadsheets of spreadsheets into LLMs, it has no clue, because LLMs have not been trained for them. They are only trained on language and images. Remember, it's all AI, but it has to be trained, pre-trained. So if it's not pre-trained, it'll be guessing, or it may look at some other existing model like an XGBoost or something where it produces some inference based on what is there. So what we are trying to do is to create a large numerical model, which is basically looking at business data and trying to understand what and how to predict and, more important, improve outcomes. So let's take, for example, you talk practical. I'll give you two or three. So what I call is a cold start. So let's say, for example, you are a restaurant chain, and you are having a problem with a menu and it's not working very well, and you want to you want to change the menu, or create a brand new product or a suite of combos, and you have no idea how consumers will react to it. However, if there's enough data across each of those menu items or something similar, and there's a model has been trained on those, then an LNM can actually combine those three models into one super model, and will give you what will happen tomorrow if you brought this combination out. Okay, so it is like looking at things which it has not even learned. It has not, but it has learned components of it, but is able to combine them into A plus B plus C together, and then create a new product called D, and is able to tell with a very high accuracy what will happen to D. Why is it able to do that? Because it has learned only A, B, and C and similar. So, for example, if you are in the restaurant business, you don't need to know about financial fraud. You don't need to know about hospital readmissions, and vice versa. But if you train across everything like what LLMs do, first they only train on language, not numbers. And they train on everything. There's too much of cross pollination and it could lead to hallucinations. So ours are very vertically curated models, where a financial fraud model will only look at financial fraud or something similar, and hospital readmissions or sepsis will look only like that. So the odds of it receiving erroneous information from similar looking but very dissimilar functions are close to zero. The advantage of an LLM is it will predict with close to zero hallucinations or errors very accurately, very fast, and also it will give very high accuracy and precision. More importantly, it will also tell how to improve outcomes by 10-20%. So if you are at X, how do I get to 1.2X? It'll do that. And that's because it's totally based on mathematics and quantitative, as opposed to qualitative or language, as LLM is.
So can I ask you a
it's got a
question?
different purpose. Yeah.
So working with LLMs, I've kind of learned that the better context you give it for what you're trying to achieve, the better result you'll get. And so the context is it can kind of understand me speaking, it can understand me writing short sentences with bad punctuation and spelling mistakes. And if I kind of give it a framework, it can give me a pretty good response, aside from the occasional hallucination. How does this work with large numerical models? Is there also kind of a context side to it, being that it's quantitative, or
Yes and no. So there is a context. You can't have anything without a context. But more important is that you have to define the problem clearly. So in an LNM, it is very mathematical and numerical. So you see, a language you can have many connotations. You could have a different meaning for a word in different parts of the world and slang. But number five is a five, regardless of where it is in the word, right? So if five is always more than four, it can never be less than four, and it's always less than six. So there is a clear set of. So what happens is it produces precision, which is missing in language. This is both plus and a minus. So in order to use it properly in LNM, you have to define the context that I want to understand financial fraud of my credit card customers in a new location Y as compared to my current location X. You have to be that precise. Once the context is that precise, it will exactly map what will happen in Y with what has happened, or what will happen in Y with what is happening in X, and give you maybe a 90 to 95% prediction. And that is the biggest difference. But if you don't give the context, it would be very difficult to run an LNM. May run without a context, but it'll give you wrong. LNM will not do at all. So you have to be very so we expect the business use is more for business, even personal. For example, one of the things you ask SXI you talked about, that's like understanding your personal financial portfolio. For example, if you have a portfolio consisting of stocks, bonds, ETFs, crypto, and commodities, and you want to understand what is it doing with respect to your own portfolio, microeconomic factors and macro, it will do it. It'll create a model of yours, but it is basing on your data. So if, for example, if you are providing very accurate fidelity or whatever brokerage data you have over the last 12 months, it'll be very good. But if your data sets are like you have 3 months or 6 months and no 6 months, then you start guessing. So I think it's as good or as bad as how you are feeding the information. The biggest difference is you're not feeding in language. You're feeding in numbers in a form of a tabular data as an Excel or a CSV or a table or from a database. That's the biggest difference.
interesting. And so,
Applications are predominantly in business applications and personal. I'll take an example. Suppose if you want to predict and improve unplanned readmissions in hospitals or sepsis, we have shown 99% accuracy. If you want to predict and stop financial fraud before it happens, our prediction and accuracy is over 98%. If you want to have, if a Walmart or somebody wants to reduce back orders in supply chain, we are close to 99.5%. Uh, those numbers can never be reached by in an LLM or anywhere close to. Okay?
how would somebody validate the numbers? Because obviously, in a business setting, it's a lot more difficult with numbers when you're
Yeah. So the
presenting to.
validation. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead and finish. Go ahead.
No, no, I was just saying, if you're presenting to the
Validation is
board.
pretty simple. You basically, we always tell our customers to run for a certain number of time in parallel, and it learns from historicals. Then it's validated parallelly. Is it a 1 month, 2 months, or 3 months will depend upon the comfort level of each customer. But they will see in parallel to what they're doing right now to what are, and if they start seeing significant exceeding a performance from our end, then they'll switch over. That's the plan.
And who are your typical customers for this? Who have you found as your target market?
So our target market is basically we are focused heavily into supply chain and financials for now. And in healthcare, we are partnering with healthcare companies who already are in the field. It's a lot difficult to get that healthcare moving. So we're looking at people who are already there. The other two areas, we're doing it ourselves. Uh, and I can't take direct names, but I give you a few examples of the customers we're working with.
Thank you. Very good. So you have a book coming out. I'd
Yes.
love to hear about your book.
Right. So it's a very interesting you brought the book up because we got an email from Springer Nature a few months ago that they saw a publication of ours and they saw LNM and they thought it was a typo. they thought it was an LLM, and they asked, was it a typo? So we said, no, it's not. It's an LLM. So they asked, what is it? So we told them exactly like you asked, same thing. So, wow, we get hundreds of requests from uh, people who want to write a book on LLMs or derivatives, but nobody has written a book on LLM, and we want our readers to read about it. And Springer Nature is a very big. So we signed a contract in 3 days with them. It's one of the fastest records, and they're covering all the costs, the publicity, the marketing, and they're giving us royalty, which is a rare. It's a pretty good one. And then, so the first draft was submitted this week to Springer, 1 month ahead of schedule, and hopefully sometime before the end of the year it will be published. It's basically the title is Large Numerical Models from a Business Perspective. Okay, it's either from or with. I forget which one they are using, but large numerical models with or from a business perspective. So
Fantastic.
they
Well,
want to really talk. So we're talking in that book the theory, and more important, nearly 8 to 10 practical applications from healthcare to supply chain to financials to HR to wireless to marketing, how they have been applied and successfully rolled out. That book is more on that.
wonderful. Right. Well, I'm sure there will be a lot of people itching to get hold of a copy of this book. Um, so this has been fantastic. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your experience here. I'd love to, as a kind of a final wrap up, just get your perspective on the future of AI from both a numerical perspective and a broader perspective.
Right. So I think the future of AI is I think this virtually everywhere now. It's if people think it's a bubble. Yeah, it could be a mini bubble in the stock market, but I think the thing is real. However, we have to be cautious about how we adopt it so that it doesn't become a Frankenstein for us and on human beings. We've got to control that, regulate that. I hope that's being done by the big guys as we speak. Regarding Sriya.AI, we are introducing. So we have actually since we talked to you, we actually have combined an LLM into an LNM, and we now call it a large language numerical model. So where we have brought in AI agents and LLMs to actually talk. So we talked about the thing about, because what we found is that most business users were not ready to input the right amount of information required for LLM to run. Because LLM is very precise; it can't hallucinate. So it will completely go wrong if you don't. So we decided to introduce LLMs initially upfront and agents who will walk Chris through the whole process to make sure that the right information is then obtained from you, depending upon where it is. And as opposed to you thinking what I should do. So that part has been done now, and it will be released sometime by end of November. So I believe the future is a combination of an LLM and LNM. And I think Sriya.AI is the world's first LLNM. And hopefully that will bridge the two into one humongous AI for the benefit of humankind. You know?
Amazing. Well, I feel privileged to have had you on the show here. Thank you so
And
much. Where can somebody find Sriya.AI if they want to see what you're doing and connect?
yeah, so Sriya.AI is our website. We also have a LinkedIn page, and all our emails are available. We have a YouTube page, I forget, but you'll find on Sriya.AI. We have a LinkedIn page, and we have a website is Sriya.AI. And of course, you can reach out to me at sk@Sriya.AI. My two initials, first and last name, sk@Sriya.AI. And that's my email. I'll be happy to take you know, answer queries. I'm a PhD professor also, so I love to teach, and I would love to even provide, information / guidance to whoever wants it.
Srinivas, thank you so much. It's been amazing having you on. I look forward to catching up with you soon.
Thank you very much, sir. Bye bye.